Nitin Bhai, they were talking about deity worshipping today. So I'll turn it over to you, Nitin Bhai, and Amritwani ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Ajay ji. Thank you, Sunil ji. Thank you so much. Nitin ji, Radhe Radhe. Over to you.
Thank you
for today's session.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Ajay and Sunil Bhai, for a wonderful session on Vivek and discernment. So we'll continue on Shloka 4.5, where Lord Krishna is trying to bring about the discernment. He's calling Arjun Parantapa, that he has full confidence that Arjun is going to slay the doubt that has arisen in his mind through proper knowledge and discernment, which will come from the, he's talking him through why, even though he thinks he's born in the same era as himself, he's different. And that is what we will continue our discussion on today. Also, we will also look at the aspect of deity worship. Different people have different understanding of it, some preconceived notions, especially if in your history books you have read about Raja Ram Mohan Rai. So we will tackle that purely from scriptural standpoint today. As explained, it's a very fascinating topic, and I'm looking forward to that engaging conversation today. Deity worship, what it means, what are the different possibilities, permutation combinations around divinity and material things. So let's get started. A very warm welcome to each one of you. I'm going to share my screen and we will get started with our opening prayers. Audio, video, do we have a thumbs up on that?
Yes, Nitin ji, all good.
All right. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. Right, welcome everybody once again. Radhe Radhe. So let me pull up the shloka that we are discussing right now. It's chapter 4, verse 5. God is saying it. So I'm going to recite it and then you're welcome to. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni Me Vyatitani Janmani Tava Charjuna Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Vetha Parantapa. Right, do we have any volunteers who want to go?
We don't have your hands raised, so Ramya ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Shri Bhagavan Vata Bahuni Me Vyatitani Janmani Tava Chartuna Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Veta Parantapa.
Very nice, Ramya ji. Radhe Radhe.
Rahul ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Bahuni Me Vyatitani Janmani Tav Charjuna Tanyaham Ved Sarvani Natvam Vedatha Parantapa.
Very nice, Rahul. It looks like you've been practicing. Wonderful. Good going. Let's take a few more.
Dinesh, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Dinesh.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahune Me Vyatitani Janmani Tava Charjuna Tanyam Veda Sarvani Na Tvam Vetsa Parantapa. Radhe Radhe.
Very nice, Dinesh. Radhe Radhe. Okay, can take maybe a few more hands.
Just see if any new hands. Yes, okay. Samji, please go ahead.
हाँ जी राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
श्री भगवान वाच बहनी में व्यातितानि जन्मानि तब चार्जुना तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि ना त्वं वेद परन्तपा राधे राधे
Ramji, Radhe Radhe.
Pragi ji, go ahead, please.
It's Pragi ji. Please go ahead.
राधे राधे श्री भगवान उवाच बहूनि मे तानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेद परन्तपः.
Wonderful. Very nice, Pragi ji. Okay, maybe you can pick 2 or 3 more hands.
Okay. Rupa ji, are you there? Go ahead, please.
Radhe Radhe, Rupa ji.
राधे राधे श्री भगवान उवाच बाहुनि मे व्यापितानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेद परन्तप.
Wonderful. Very nice, Rupa ji. Okay, we can
Thank you.
quickly cover how many hands more we have.
We have 4 hands raised.
Okay, we can quickly cover all 4 of them. We can
Please go ahead, Ashutosh ji.
Yes, Ashutosh.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
श्री भगवानुवाच बहुनी मे व्यतीतानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेत्थ परन्तप.
Very
Radhe
nice,
Radhe.
Ashutosh ji. Radhe Radhe. Hope you are still planning to attend the retreat. There's a retreat in February in Banara. For those of you who haven't, do take a chance. Great opportunity to meet Swamiji there in India. So do check it out as well. All right, let's take maybe 3 more hands and then we'll get started.
Riya ji, please go ahead.
राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe.
श्री भगवान उवाच बहूनि मे व्यातितानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्याहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेत्त परन्तप.
Very nice.
राधे
Riya.
राधे
Radhe Radhe. Let's take a couple more hands and then we'll get started. I see quite a few, but we'll take a couple more because we have some content to cover as well. And there's going to be some good discussion on the topic. It's a very interesting topic today.
Swati ji, please go ahead, Swati ji.
या राधे राधे श्री
Radhe.
भगवान उवाच बहुनि मे व्यतीतानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तानय वेद सर्वाणि सर्वाणि न त्ववेत्थ परन्तप.
Thank you very much. All right, last one. Whoever Amruta Vaniji picks up.
Kamlesh ji, please go ahead.
Yes, Kamlesh ji. You're the lucky one. Last but not the least.
Go ahead, please, Kamlesh ji. We cannot hear them. So
Okay. Okay, maybe the next one. If there was somebody in line. they-
Golab ji was there. And okay. I'll give it to Golab ji. She was there.
All right.
Go ahead, Golab ji, please. Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे
Radhe Golab ji.
राधे राधे एवरीवन श्री भगवान उवाच बहुनि मे व्यतीतानि जन्मानि तव चार्जुन तान्यहं वेद सर्वाणि न त्वं वेत्थ परन्तप. राधे राधे.
Thank you very much. So let's get started. The shloka. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Lord said, Bahuni many may of mine, Vyatitani have passed, Janmani births, Tava of yours, and Arjuna, Arjun, Rani them, Aham I, Veda no, Sarvani all, na not, Tvam you, Vetha no, Parantapa, Arjun, the scorcher of foes. Short translation. Supreme Lord is saying, both you and I have had many births, O Arjun. You have forgotten them, while I remember them all, O Parantapa. All right, so we did discuss part of it yesterday. We went through the definition of God itself. So we'll do a quick recap and then we will get started. In fact, we'll get started and then I think a bit of a recap will come anyway. So as you can see, you see a jail here right now, right? A jailhouse. Different people are out there, and it's very natural to believe all of them are prisoners if you look at it from outside. However, that may or may not be the case. So let's look at it through this analogy. So Lord Krishna is saying, merely because he's standing in front of Arjuna in the human form, he should not be equated with human beings. Very clearly, Lord Krishna is saying that. In fact, in I'll get to that later. Maybe. So if you look at this jailhouse here, the president of a country sometimes decides to visit the prison. But if you see the president standing in the jail, or for that matter, even a jailer can pay a visit to a jail occasionally, then we do not erroneously conclude that he's also a convict. So just because of the fact that Lord descends in this material world and does the activities like any one of us does, doesn't mean he becomes one of us, just like us. So when God descends on this earth, it is called a Leela, Nar Leela, like Ramji did, Ram Bhagwan did. So when we have the Shahra, if you remember that there's a Ram Leela that happens, somebody becomes a Ram and somebody becomes Hanuman, somebody becomes Ravan. So when people become Ram, do they really become Ram? No, it is called Leela, Ram Leela. So similarly, when God takes on an avatar in human form, he doesn't become human. He still remains God. He's not bereft of his divine powers. He's still divine. So this is the key concept to understand. Even though he may look in this material world, and this material world is designed for the conditioned souls, but if he comes here for an express purpose, then erroneously we cannot conclude that he's also one among us, or he's also a convict, as you would see in this jail, right? One of these might be lawyer who might have come to meet. One of them could be a jailer or a president himself. Not all could be prisoners. And like I said, God sometimes descends for a purpose. And the key point here to understand is he doesn't lose his divinity just because he is taken on an avatar. He's never divested of his divine attributes and powers. That is the key thing to understand here. Furthermore, so this is Adi Guru Shankaracharya, who propounded the Advait philosophy. In his Bhashya, let's see what he states. In Sharirak Bhashya, he's saying, I'll go directly to the translation. This verse has been spoken by Sri Krishna. He's mentioned this verse in his Bhashya to refute foolish people who doubt that he is not God. In fact, if you go to Bhagavad Gita 9:11, chapter 9, verse 11, Lord Krishna himself is saying very clearly, he's saying, Avjananti mam mudham manushim tanumashritam param bhavam jananto mam bhuta maheshwaram. So he's saying that when he takes on a human manushim tanumashritam, when he takes on a human body, not body, I shouldn't say human avatar, descension, his body is still divine, by the way. It may look like our body, but it's not. Then people with dim intellect consider him a normal person, like human being. But people who have parambhav, they can actually understand the divinity of his personality. One may ask, how about his friends and Yashoda Maiya and everybody? They used to consider him an ordinary boy as well. Which category do they belong to? So yes, two category of people. One who are of dim intellect, who have not yet reached that stage where through his grace, they can see through his divinity. And the second category of people are obviously like Yashoda Maiya's friends and all, whom he hides his divinity, Aishwarya Shakti, even though they have the capability, because they perfected their devotion just because of love. Just because of their love, he hides his divinity from them, even though his divinity does manifest from time to time, as we have heard in his Leelas, when Lord Indra came, his friends, all of a sudden that formality and all of a sudden that appreciation for who he is came, and because of which their love did not evaporate, but part of love got converted into respect and that aura that he is God. So with through his Yogamaya power, he made them forget it. Same thing with Yashoda Maiya. Whenever she would get a glimpse of his Aishwarya Shakti, he would make her forget through that. So that doesn't mean they did not understand. They did have the capability, but he would make them forget. On the other spectrum, end of the spectrum, are the people who consider Lord Krishna as human being. They say when Brahma ko Maya lag jati hai, to wo, he descends. That's not the case. There's a philosophy, if you come across that, you can simply chuck it out. That's not the case. He's still divine. He willfully comes and willfully closes his pastimes. Not that he's subjected to the laws of this material nature like any one of us. So there's a key difference there. Let's go further. So if you look at it, the birth of Lord Krishna, then he did take birth. We'll get into a little bit into that. And then the eating, we would eat like we all do. I mean, amongst many other activities like we do, drinking and then sleeping. So looking at these activities, it seems like a human, just like one of us. In fact, that's not the case. In fact, in Shloka 4.9, Lord Krishna himself is saying, Janma karma cha me divyam. That means my birth and my acts, they are all divine. They are not ordinary. So through his Yogamaya power, he can actually simulate or give an impression to the mother that I am actually in your womb. But he's God. He's not obligated to hang upside down for 9 months and then come out like a normal babies too. He simply manifests. In fact, he came in his four-armed form just before his birth, and then Devaki said, this Aishwarya form of yours does not help me invoke the maternal sentiments. I'd feel like reciting Vishnu Sahasranama looking at you. So why don't you come in a boy, charming baby form? And that's when he came in that form. Similarly, he would grab morsels from his friends. He said, okay, I want to see what you are eating. So whatever Yashoda Maiya and all these cowherd boys, they would carry their own bundle of food, but Krishna would relish in grabbing food, the half-eaten food from his friend's mouth, and eat it. Out of love, that much. That's how he graces his friends as well. So if an ordinary person takes a look at it, possibly we were also witness to some of his pastimes, they will say it seems like a very ordinary boy. All those regular activities he's doing, becoming Ghoda and all that stuff. Same thing, butter stealing Leela. He would sleep. There are beautiful jhankis Maharaj Ji has penned down on the act of Krishna's sleep. A 5-step or a 6-step jhanki where how Yashoda Maiya is planning to, trying to wake him up like we wake up babies. And then again, he's falling down, and again, he'll wake up, and then again, he's falling down. And then finally, she will make him stand. And that's how very beautiful jhanki. The point here be when he comes down, descends, he would do all the pastimes like normal humans would do. And only people with purified heart would actually get to see through his divinity. Nobody else can. And in fact, God says, in whatever sentiment or devotion you worship me or attach your mind to me, that is how I will meet you. So it happened twice actually. Not twice, it would have happened multiple times, I'm sure, but at least twice that I'm aware of, which I've heard from Swamiji. Once was when he was fighting fighting Chanur and those wrestlers in Kamsa's that competition, wrestling competition that he had arranged when he had gone to Mathura. So then when he was fighting there, when he went there actually to fight these wrestlers, the moment he shook their hand, it was so hard like a thunderbolt. These wrestlers got a glimpse of who God is. And when people in the audience who were looking at Krishna, The mothers are feeling he's such a tender boy. He doesn't stand a chance in front of these mighty wrestlers. So they were having those maternal sentiments looking at that boy and feeling, how kind, tender he is. And at the same time, some people were finding he's more beautiful than a Cupid. Some people were saying he's death personified, he's got so many heads and all that stuff. Same thing happened when Ram Bhagwan, he went to Sita Maiya's in that Swayamvar. Different people were having different glimpses of God based on the feelings that they had. Right? People were thinking he's death personified. For demons, he was looking like that. For bhaktas, he was looking like, the God, Lord himself personified. For ladies who would adore God in Madhurreva would look like a handsome boy. For mothers, he would look like a baby, tender boy. How can he lift such a heavy bow of Lord Shiva? So anyway, God does all these leelas, but then people, they are not tricked. I would say they cannot see through his divinity, and it is very, very possible that we were one of those as well who could not see through that. We might have thought of him as a competent boy or something like that. And because of that, there are a lot of philosophies, even within Sanatan Dharma, different branches, which argue that Lord Krishna was born like rest of us. He ate, drank, slept like we all do, and so he could not have been God. Okay, these kind of philosophies are not coming from Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. I don't know where it got distorted, but I wouldn't be surprised if you come across these kind of theories. Okay? So next time you see any message like that, you would know it's not the correct way of looking at it. And Lord Krishna is emphasizing that the difference between the soul and God, he's very clearly stating that. He's saying that although I descend in this world, he still remains omniscient. That doesn't mean he's become localized. He's still Sarvagya, Sarvavyapak, and unlike the soul, whose knowledge continues to be finite. So Lord Krishna is saying, my knowledge is not finite. Your might be limited to this birth. Mine goes back all the way, since we've all been taking births, and we all have taken multiple births. In fact, it is said that Lord Krishna and Arjun, as a duo, in previous birth they were Nar Narayana avatar. They had taken that. They did a tapasya. There's a story for that as well. So they were Nar Narayana avatar personified, who came again as when Lord Krishna took a Purna avatar. Then Arjun basically was Narayana. He took that. He was Nar in the previous life. He was already a perfected soul, and then he took a birth as Arjun as well. Now we looked at let's look at some more differences. We spoke about this concept yesterday, but let's reiterate this. We spoke about the age. Yes, we are the same age. We are divine. Satchidanand, God is Vibhu, we are Anu. Influenced by a Maya, we are Mayadhin, God is Mayadhish. So these are the concepts we spoke about. And also, let's look at some additional differences between soul and God so that we can appreciate this fact more. God is all pervading. The soul is not all pervading. It pervades the body it inhabits. Okay, that is localized. God is all pervading. Even though he has taken avatar, at the same time he's permeating every atom of this universe. At the same time, he might have taken avatar somewhere else. At the same time, he's seated within you as a Paramatma. At the same time, he's holding this entire universe. At the same time, he's not participating. He's the cause of all causes with regards to annihilation and manifestation of so many Brahmans with each breath, exhale and inhale. All that is happening simultaneously in case of God. So it's not like, okay, now Krishna is here now. That's all we have localized God. Not of that. Yes, Seemaji, you raised your hand real quick. Is there a question?
Go ahead, Seemaji.
Yes, Radhe Radhe. Nitinji, could you explain about the age being the same? Because if God was first and then came the small souls,
no,
how can we be slightly different? No.
So yeah, so you can always put down this note next time you come across this. I think I explained it briefly yesterday. God came first and then came souls and then he created Maya is not what our scriptures tell us. All these three entities are eternal. They have always existed. They are nitya, always. They are eternal. They have always existed. The Jivatma, us, the God, obviously, there is Swarupa Shakti, and the Maya. All three are eternal entities. They have existed since eternity and will continue to exist. Nobody can destroy anything, anybody, and they have continued to exist always. Although we are Jivatma, the Tatastha Shakti of God, but when God's Shakti is there, it has always existed. See, it's just like this. If you see somebody is washing his mouth in water, right? Let's assume, visualize. Somebody is actually, there's a lake and he's washing his face or washing his hands or doing something with the water there. If you ask, what is it? You know, this thing in front of you, that big body of water in front of you, that person will say lake. But if you think beyond, you know, what is beyond the lake and before the lake, there is land. Would you call it land or would you call it lake? It's land also. It's on the land, there is lake also. So similarly, it's all God. But at the same time, there is subtle differences. Like we are his Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti means his surface. I mean, tat means basically like a bank of a river. And Maya is its external energy. And then Swarupa Shakti is his internal energy. It's like even in our body, if you look at it, technically everything is our body. But are the nails same as our skin? No. Are our hair similar to our skin? No. They don't have those sensory perceptions. That's why you have haircut and you can lose weight even by a haircut. That's what I choose to do more often than not. So it's all God. God was always existing, but at the same time, his powers have also existed along with him. It's not that first God and then his powers came. His powers have been there for as long as God has been there. So we are technically the same age as God. So if that is the good news, where you can challenge God, you are not senior to us. The bad news is that's where the competition ends. Nothing further. After that, he's Vibhu, we are Anu. He's Sarvavyapi, we are localized, as we are going to see those differences. Like we said, God is all pervading. And in our case, while the soul only pervades the body, it inhabits. Yes, Seemaji, will continue on this discussion. We'll get back to it. If you have a follow-up question on it, once we get to the discussion. But like I said, nobody is senior to anybody. All have existed since eternity and nobody can destroy the other. These entities are eternal and will always continue to exist. The second is God is all powerful. We are not all powerful. We don't even have the power to liberate ourselves from Maya without God's grace. If we do a lot of sadhana, just stuff that we can do on our own without surrendering to God, then with that effort, we cannot conquer Maya. We can go up to a certain extent, which is called a Vidya Maya. But for us to actually conquer the Vidya Maya aspect of it, we still have to surrender to God. It's only through his grace we can do that. So basically, we are not powerful. The third thing, we are not all powerful, I'm saying. God is the creator of the laws of nature. We see so many laws: law of gravitation, law of gravity, law of optics, law of thermodynamics. We study so many laws in chemistry, in physics, probably in biology as well. So if there are laws, there has to be a lawmaker. And who's the lawmaker? That is God. In fact, Swamiji gave a very beautiful answer. He said when he used to do engineering, he was in IIT Delhi, by the way, for those of you who don't know. He said at that time, I used to think, I'm studying all these laws. He did mechanical engineering. So I am also a mechanical engineer, but then my claim to fame as a mechanical engineer is to know how to change a bulb and nothing beyond that. So he said, when I was studying engineering, I always used to wonder, rather than studying the laws, why not study the lawmaker? I said, very deep. Never, how many Asaf can think like that? But he had that kind of a thing even at that time. So God is the creator of the laws of nature, while the soul is subject to these laws. We are all subject to these laws, law of aging, and all the laws that this material nature has. We don't have those control over that. We can discover those laws like Newton did when he saw an apple falling, but it's not that we can invent a law. We cannot create a new law of our own. All those laws are in place They have been put in place by God. Law of entropy in chemistry, law of thermodynamics, law of motion, action, reaction, whatever you may want to call it. We can invent those, but those laws are in place regardless of whether we are aware of it or not. So this is the third one. The fourth one is he's the upholder of the entire creation. I was talking about, while the soul is upheld by him. So one way of understanding it is like a bird holding something in its beak. Bird has to be bigger, and then what he's holding this entire universe. So this entire universe or multiverses that we have, they have to be sustained somewhere, and it can be sustained only by somebody who's bigger than them, sum total of them, and that is who God is. He's actually upholding it, and we are being upheld as a soul. God is all-knowing, like he's telling to Arjun that I remember each and every birth, previous births, not you. So he's all-knowing, and he knows pratek sankalp of pratek shan of pratek life. So every thought of every lifetime, of every moment, he has the account of that. That is who God is. So you can imagine the amount of big data he can maintain. So these are some of the, and the soul does not have complete knowledge even in one subject. So as we see, even if one subject in material world, material energy is his inferior energy. All these laws of material energy are the laws which dictate his inferior energy. And within that, nobody can claim to master a subject, no matter who you are, no matter how specialized you are. The science keeps on becoming subtler and subtler and subtler. Starts with journal science, then it becomes physics, chemistry, biology, and within that you have so many sub branches. And if you pick up a branch, if you do your master's, bachelor's, then master's, then your doctorate, and then postdoctorate, and you can continue forever. But you cannot master that any subject. That is how infinite even the material energy is. So soul doesn't have the ability to do that, but yes, it has the potential to actually become like God when God graces God. So God is God. There are two attributes of God. One is he's himself great, and the second is that he can make others great. Both attributes have God has. So he's himself great, and then he has an ability to make others great as well. So soul has that potential to become God-like once it gains the eligibility through perfecting its devotion and surrender. All right, so with that, let's look at, okay, so we spoke about this concept yesterday. Who is God? So these are the 6 aspects: righteousness, glory, prosperity, knowledge, detachment, majesty, which God has in infinite extent, to infinite extent. We have it in bits and pieces, and we get impressed with those people who have even a little bit of it, and that too temporarily. God has it permanently and to an infinite extent. That is why God is God. And these are called Shad Aishware. God is called Shad Aishware Paripurn. Shad means 6, as you can see. And this is not doing justice to his full glory, to be honest. It's just a drop in his full glory, just so that we can understand, appreciate, and relate to it. So that's why we are trying to simplify it, at least giving our minds a kind of a framework that it can resonate with, it can understand who is God, because these are some of the things our mind can easily resonate to, something that attracts us, we find captivates our imagination. So God is called Shad Aishware Yukt, like we discussed yesterday. Now let's get to the key part of discussion today. It's a very important concept. Hopefully after today's discussion, it is crystal clear to you and no more confusion on this topic. It's a very important topic, and really lays the basis for our devotion on this path, on the path of bhakti. So it's very important to understand it very clearly and understand the fundamentals or basics around it. Otherwise, if you approach anything with doubt, even if it's 1%, it doesn't really help. Stone deity aspect of it. So there are 3 parts to it. One is the object itself. The second is the thoughts or the bhav that you build towards that object. And third is obviously the subject, ourselves only. So what we are going to discuss is We'll understand it through this prism that we said, the object subjected and the thought interplay, how it pans out. And then whether or if deity really helps us on the path of spirituality. Anybody has any thoughts on that before I get into a discussion? But yeah, let's get into the discussion and then I'll invite some discussion around it, because I would really like to hear participants' opinion on it before I get any further. So we spoke about these three, and I'm going to present a short matrix which will build on our discussion. So we spoke about these three. What will be the result? So let's get started with a matrix, and the matrix is the object is worldly, the thoughts are worldly, and the subject is worldly as well. What will be the result? Before that, if anybody has any question, real quick, and we'll get that. This is a very important discussion. We'll build this matrix, and I would like it to be a two-way street, interactive as we go now. We do have time.
Imaji, please go ahead.
I thought you wanted us to answer the question or this matrix.
The matrix, it is going to tie into the discussion. The question that I asked will automatically be answered if we go through this matrix. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, you can answer the question that I had previously.
Okay, what is it? We had that screen.
Okay, I can go back.
Yeah.
Sure.
How and if a deity worship helps us to path of spirituality? I think it helps us because it builds the sentiments, sattvic sentiments, shubha sanskars that are built, and that helps us with spirituality. And one of the examples that comes in my mind is when Swami Vivekananda was in a court with a king, and there was a big portrait of a king's father, and this king did not believe in stony worship, so he was making fun of it. And Swami Vivekananda said to him, "Is this portrait of your father, the king?" And the king said, "Yes." "So what if I step on it and spit on it?" And the king was very irate, and he says, "Why?" "Well, because he's my father." The thing is, he had a special sentiment towards that big picture, portrait, although it was a picture of his father and not his father. And that's how Swami Vivekananda helped him to understand that it is not the stone or the deity, it's our sentiments and that we build around it. So it may be an object, but these bhavs are genuine. And yes, they are worldly because we have a gross body. And the subject is also worldly, the subject, but because of our sentiments, the result will be spiritual. So I guess that's the end.
Okay, all right. Let me play a devil's advocate in that case, just to get the discussion going. So you take some mud or a cow dung, okay, form a laddu out of it, and tell yourself it's a worldly object. Okay, the first part of the matrix. You with me? Now the subject is also worldly that we have picked up. We are worldly. The object, the subject is worldly. The object is also worldly. And then you form a bhav or a sentiment around it. Wow, this is going to be a rasgulla. Okay, or it is going to be a good laddu. Would it change the fact if you taste it? Because you have made such sentiments for something which is worldly. Let's get this going. Let's hear from other participants as well. So object, subject, both are worldly. And bhavs are also that, okay, you have put all the sentiments. So I'm going to taste this and it's going to be so sweet, the best delicacy I've ever had. And then you taste it. Will it change anything?
Narayananji.
Yes, Narayananji, please go ahead. I can see quite a few other hands raised.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji. The result will be worldly because object and subject are fine, but the bhav is more important here. So even if you say a deity, deity is again worldly, and subject is also worldly there. But the bhav, what you have the bhav, as the earlier madam said, like the example. So what we feel or what we think is more important than what we, basically the thoughts are more important here. And another answer to your earlier question. So God is everywhere. So, but we see in the Murti there. Doesn't mean that he's only in the Murti, he's everywhere, but in Murti also. That's why we see as God there.
Fair point. Very nice. Thank you, Narayanji, for shedding more light into it. I would like to hear from other participants as well, and then I'll answer this question before we start building the remaining metrics around it as well. Very nice. Thank you, Narayanji. Let's hear from maybe a couple more, and then we'll get into that further.
Okay, Preeti ji.
Yeah. Radhe Radhe. A beautiful session, Nitin ji, as every day. I do not have an answer to this question, but I have a small input. Please allow me to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. So having an object helps because, see, this is purely a personal experience I'm talking through. When there is an object to look at or to meditate upon, the mind, which is monkey, stays tethered to that object, and usually the result is good. So these are my 2 cents. I know it is a slight digression from the question, but thank you. Radhe Radhe.
No, great point, Preeti ji. Very true. It helps you tame your monkey mind and brings about a focus around it for sure. So today we are going to refute that. Look at that concept. I saw that movie. Oh my God! And a lot of people get very impressed with that. So kind of a good movie. PK was also interesting, but they miss a point. Okay, they miss a point, and that point is what we are going to talk about today. It's good. Okay, for people who are non-believers, it's a very cool movie, and wow, but what point they miss is what we are going to talk about. Anybody else real quick who wants to add before I get into the result of worldly, that laddu, no matter what you do, it will give its taste, because that's what it is. Yes, real quick, and then I'll build on that.
Go ahead, Sandhya ji.
Radhe Radhe. So with respect to this question, I think I also agree that the thoughts have to be non-worldly for the result to be non-worldly. But with respect to the first question, I think it helps if we have an image in our mind that we can relate to. It helps building the faith and also concentration. I mean, it's a simple thing that I felt with yoga as well. When we do yoga, if there are certain poses which are difficult to hold, but if we can just focus at a given point, it's possible to hold that for long. So I think our mind can concentrate better if we have a very specific defined image in our mind. So,
Great. So let me put the answer here. We'll continue on this discussion. So the result is worldly. As we have seen with our experience, no matter how much prep up you do your mind, laddu will never give any other taste than what it is supposed to be. So worldly object, we will continue to be worldly. We are worldly. So subject is always worldly. Object is also worldly because we cannot pick up a divine object in this material world. How can we pick it up? We are not in Golok or Saket Lok or Devi Lok or Shiv Lok. And then the thoughts are worldly because we are trying to enjoy that stuff, right? So the result is going to be worldly. Now let's bring in other variation to it. The thoughts and bhav are worldly. The subject is divine. What is going to be the result? Let's look at all the permutation combinations today.
Rahulji.
And give me an example around it as well, if you could, please.
I just wanted to answer the first question.
Actually, I would miss it. I think it's a bit of a typo there. The subject will be worldly, the object will be divine, but the thoughts are worldly. Okay. I hope you get that part. Now, what will happen? Anyways, you go ahead. Shouldn't matter much.
I just wanted to add that Jaki rahi bhavna jaisi, Prabhu Murat dekhi tin jaisi. That was my point in that earlier question. And I think here also the result will be worldly probably, because I'm not sure about the thoughts, whether those can be divine. Okay.
So when you look at the divine, the actual object subject I've swapped here, that's just a typo. When you actually approach something divine, even with worldly sentiments, it will give you a divine result. I'll give you some examples. there were three categories of gopis. The one which did Sakam Bhakti. So they approach with their own self-interest, or Shishupal for that matter, who actually hated God. Okay. And people who do not appreciate the divinity, but they simply fall in love with God. They don't understand the divinity. But the object is still divine. You will still get a divine result. That is the power of God. Like I said, the Shurpanakha example I gave you, she did not know Ram Bhagwan was a god. So she approached Ram Bhagwan with a worldly sentiment that I want to marry this guy. He looks very handsome. And it was a worldly desire. It was not a divine desire. But the object was divine, even though the bhavana was worldly, and the subject will continue to be worldly. The result was divine. She ended up becoming Kubja, and Krishna actually bestowed her his grace and actually adopted her as one of his wives as well, just because she had that sentiment. So when the object is divine, even if you approach it with a worldly desire, you would still get the divine result. Putana, was it a divine desire? It was a worldly desire to kill Lord Krishna without knowing that he's God. What result did she get? Golok. Sakam Bhakti, Golok. Shishupal, was his desire divine? His desire was born out of hatred for Lord Krishna, because he made two of his arms disappear, and then anyway he did not love Krishna, like Krishna at all. He hated him. But what was the result? Sudarshan Chakra came, and God's rule is whomever he kills with his own hands or through his instruments, he gets his reward. So even though your desire might be worldly, you will continue to be worldly. But if the object is divine with God, you will still get a divine result. It's a very important concept to understand. Let's bring in the third variation of it.
Nitinji, there is a question. Can we have an example from modern times?
From modern times, I think from Meera standpoint, probably. I don't know. I mean, Meera was called a Sakam Bhakti. She actually wanted Lord Krishna not to serve him. She wanted him as her husband, because her mother had told him that this is your husband in the childhood, and she would always sing Mere to Giridhar Gopal Dusro Na Koi. What was the result she got? She actually merged with God. Her body was never recovered. There were only 2 flowers that were found inside that temple where Meera was seen last. She could be one of the examples. Her desire was not to serve God. Her desire was to see God as her beloved for her own sake. So when we talk about Gopi love, she would probably fall into Sadharani Rati category. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing it out. She was not at the epitome of Nishkam love that we're talking about, but the result was still divine. Okay. Now, worldly. What's the third one? No, I think it is the same as the second one. I just fixed that. So let's say it should have been, forget about that. Let's not get into that. Yeah, so now worldly, the subject is worldly, the object is divine, and you approach it with divine sentiments. Let's go to the fourth one. The second and third are the same. What will happen in that case? Anybody who wants to?
Padmaji, would you like to?
Let's see. I'm trying to say.
You are bringing in divine sentiments, even though you are worldly, you are material, and the object in front of you is also material, worldly. But the sentiments that you are attaching to that object is divine. What
okay. So I think it's divine, but what I wanted to say to the question was, and this is how I'm seeing everything, like, the column that you're building, faith gives more faith, irrespective of the desire in the spiritual world. Like, you have faith in God, and you'll get more faith. So that's what I'm trying to apply, and irrespective of your desire. And then and this is how I'm applying to myself, like even in Mahabharata or Ramayana, right? All the Rakshasas, they prayed Lord with a bad intention. They desired lots of bad things. They said, we should never die, give us these powers and everything. But God still gave them that thing. So that's how I'm seeing. So I think for the last one, if everything is right, the subject is worldly, the thought is divine, and the object is also worldly. Okay, object. Okay, okay. Let's see. I'm trying.
This is what happens when you do things in a hurry, but the principals will get it right, but I hope you're getting the gist of it. I've just corrected it, okay? I realized the mistake that I did, so
Let me see. So is there a last one? Oh, okay, there is the last one. Okay. So the subject is worldly, which is us. The thoughts are divine, yes. And the object is, we don't have to see the player, but can I finish this one, Kanna? The thoughts are divine. I think it's divine. The thoughts are divine, and the object is worldly. Oh, object is worldly. So it's still divine. Okay. Yeah, that makes.
it's still divine.
Yes, that makes sense.
This is the rule, and this is essentially what we do. I'll get back to it. I just wanted to show you. So real quick, Ramayana says, Prabhu Vyapak Sarvatra Samana Prem Te Prakat Hui Me Jana. There are enough examples in our history to do that. So these are the 4 principles you can remember and just put it always there. Seeing divinity in the divine gives a divine result, which is very obvious. Second principle, loving the divine without awareness of his divinity also gives a divine result, like in case of Shupnakha, Kubja, and everybody. Third principle, loving material things with a divine sentiment gives a divine result, like Shaligram or the deity that you do. Fourth principle, loving worldly things with worldly sentiments gives a material result. These are the 4 principles. And the third one actually defines the deity worship. Why does it happen? There is a reason behind it. Because God is omnipresent. Narayanji was explaining that beautifully. He's omnipresent and at the same time he's antaryami. So both within the subject and object, God is there. And he's sentient, which is not happening in the case of a Jad Shakti. That doesn't happen. So you get worldly results otherwise. You approach worldly things with worldly sentiments, will happen. But God is seated within. He notes your intention. So if you're trying to form divine sentiments, like when you do Roop Dhyan, it's obviously a Murti or a deity, but you bring divine sentiments, I'm interacting with him, I'm serving him, all that stuff. And then that Murti, also there is God, because he's everywhere present in every atom of this universe. In fact, Maharajji says, forget about that Murti. You form a Murti of your own mind. And then those divine sentiments will give you divine results. And that is how a lot of people have completed their God realization, because otherwise there is no way. It's a chicken and egg situation. You cannot see God unless you are pure. You will not become pure unless you visualize God. How will it happen? So your sentiments matter. When you do Roop Dhyan, when you do your meditation, when you sit down, when you think about God, even though we can't see him, we try to simulate that in our mind, that will yield its result. So these 4 principles you can always remember. Next time somebody says Murti Puja, all this is no. It matters. This gives you a basis, and Preeti ji said it brings in focus even better. That is icing on the cake. You're able to focus and you're trying to form that sentiment. Dhanajat story, little devotee story, where God actually manifested out of that deity. Just because he had firm faith there is God in it. God manifested from a pillar for Prahlad, just because he had firm faith. So you get divine results, even though you are looking at a worldly object with those sentiments. That is the rule, and that basically explains why deity worship is important. You can actually do that, but your sentiments matter. All right, with that, I'm going to take a pause. Any questions? I saw a few hands. We can take those, or anybody who wanted to add anything to this discussion, we can take that as well.
Ramya ji, please go ahead.
Radhe. In this slide, I have a question. I was a bit confused with subject and object. Subject is as the person, right? And object is the deity, right?
True. I know. I just corrected that. Hopefully now it's fine.
You mean subject is God, or?
No. Subject is us always.
Okay. The subject is us. So I had a question in the second thing, that if subject is divine and if thoughts are worldly, is it possible? Because
subject, not possible, because subject is God, right? It's divine. It has to have a divine thought, so it cannot be worldly. They may choose to do a leela to have that, but their thoughts will always be divine. Not possible. If subject is divine, the thoughts cannot be worldly. That combination is not possible.
Okay, that one question I had. And then I had a question in the next slide. After this, here, if we look at things like this placebo and all, where do they fit in, like the placebo effect and all? We see that the material thing, it's a
It's falls in the
material.
first row, basically. You are worldly, it's all worldly. It's not divine experience. Placebo, if your body is reacting in a certain way, just because your mind is compelled to believe it is the truth, that is a worldly result. It's nothing to do with divinity. So it will fall in the first category.
But it is a good result, right? Like
Good,
the person is
good doesn't mean divine. Okay. So, and Bhagavad Gita tells us being good is not good enough. So you need to go beyond good also. Something which is good for our materially may not be good for us spiritually. So that's a difference.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Yes, any other questions? Amrita Vaniji, you may have some announcements to make as well.
Yes, there are some announcements, and let me give it a shot.
You can do that, and feedback tracker also you can post for everybody.
Yes. Meanwhile, I'll give it to Ashutosh. Go ahead, please.
Sure.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
I just wanted to say in that slim, any divine means if that divine touches anything, it becomes divine. Doesn't matter in which column it comes.
Very true.
If divine touches anything, it becomes divine.
Very true, because the see, one entity if divine, if the object becomes divine, and everything will become divine. That's a great call out, because whether you associate with it worldly or you associate with it in a divine sentiment, it will always give you divine result. It is like a philosopher's stone. Anything that will come in contact with it will become gold. Whether you do it willfully, whether you do it accidentally, whether you will do it with anger, whether you throw something, philosopher's stone will do its job. That is the beauty of attaching our mind to God, with regardless of what sentiments we are having.
Aarti Pandeyji, please go ahead.
Yes.
Like we see there are so many idols in the market, but the one idol that we bring and the prana pratishtha is done, like with mantras, it is charged, and the idol we supposedly God is there inside, and with that sentiment we directly connect. So this is a very important thing, that thought energy directly it links with the God energy.
See, all these rituals have a significance for sure, but let's say you have a shaligram, you don't do pran pratishtha in it. Will it have any less God in it? Because he's permeating it. You may start worshipping it as your God, and it will still give you the same result. But yes, those rituals matter when we establish a temple or a deity somewhere. Just brings in that additional sentiment for sure. But then even if you are doing a small stone, you are doing that at your home and you worship it with your wholeheartedly, with your full sentiment, even though you might not have performed rituals on it, it will still give you the same effect, because your bhav is there, your faith is there.
Swati ji, go ahead, please. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I just want to add one point, that whether it is stone deity or Manomay Roop Dhyan, anything, but if bhav is missing, then it's of no use. You worship, you do puja, you put flowers, you put dhoop, agarbatti, everything, but your bhav is the most important thing, I think, in the puja. So if you have that bhav, when a statue is not there, deity is not there, nothing is there, but your bhav is there, that is the most divine thing, and that will give you the result of divine power only.
Very true. Bhav is the key thing, very true. Because if you're doing it ritual just for the sake of it, without having that bhav, that firm belief or faith that this is my God, it will not happen. In fact, I know a few devotees, I mean, I was reading an article, they go to the extremes of booking 2 tickets even when they fly on aeroplane. Okay, because the other ticket is for Krishna, you are going to travel with me. That much bhav they have developed that they actually believe he's with us all the times. But they'll put 2 tickets, one for him and one, taking it so far. So It all boils down to bhav at the end of the day, and that firm belief that we are having. So when we say thoughts bhav worldly, worldly means attaching. Attachment is the key. You cannot just simply sit there and not have faith and ask for random things. I mean, I don't know how it will work out, but then attachment is the key. If you look at all the special cases that I'm talking about, whether it was Putana or Shishupal or Ratnamala or Shupnakha, they got attached. They really wanted to do, with God for whatever sanskars they might have had, and they got the result for that. So if we get lucky to see God and can actually attach our mind, even if it is for our self-interest, Sakam Bhakti, you will still get the same result, even though it may not be the perfect topmost price of God, but you will still get a divine result around it. That's what our scriptures say. All right.
Yes, Swatiji, did you want to add anything?
Radhe Radhe, I want to add one thing. The bhav can be hatred also, like Putana
Yes.
and all, they had the hatred bhav. Shishupal had hatred bhav. Kans had hatred bhav. So any bhav, it may be love, hate, anything, because God only wants that his attachment to him. So it may be any bhav, you greed or love or he likes the bhav more important. That is the most important thing. It can be anything.
Yes, Swatiji, I think you brought a very interesting point. Yes, God, like a philosopher's stone, will do its job whether you do it lovingly or with hatred. Having said that, it is not a recommended practice for ordinary souls like us to approach God with a sentiment of hatred, because we are not ordinary. I mean, we are not souls like Jay Vijay and all who could actually play it to perfection. They could think of God only in that hatred. We are not there yet. So for ordinary souls like us, it is recommended to actually approach God with a loving sentiment and not a sentiment of hatred, because you have to be really special to take your hatred to such a level that you do think about only God all the times, like Kans or Ravan could. But they were not ordinary souls. They were actually doing the Leela as well. They could achieve God in that sentiment, but for normal people, it's not a recommended path.
There is a question from Krish Ji. Great session. How is a regular sentiment different from divine sentiment?
Regular sentiment, divine sentiment, it's like you're trying to attach to God, because we can't see God. We can at best form some kind of an image through our material faculties. Even our mind is material. But then you try to attach to something which is divine. So that sentiment is, I am actually approaching God. That itself makes it divine at that point. But if you think about, I don't know what would differentiate in that case. How would you think about worldly God or divine God? I don't know what's the difference. God is God. So when you think about God, it by default becomes divine. It qualifies it as divine because God is Gunatit. So maybe if you can give an example, we can think about it. But when you're thinking about God, it automatically becomes transcendental, because God is not Panch Mahabhut. Right? He's actually divine. He's made of Satchitanand and he's transcendental. So any meditation they say is transcendental where you're thinking about God. Rest nothing is transcendental other than that.
Can you ask what point Oh My God movie missed, please? Thank you.
Yeah, the deity part of it. It disallowed the fact that if somebody is having bhav, they are approaching God with a sentiment. Okay, it's my business. If I want to offer something to God with a sentiment, all right, I offer it to my baby when it's his birthday. I offer it to my mother. I offer it to my father, and I offer it to my Lord, who's my Parampita. How can you discard that sentiment saying you are wasting that? That point was missed, and nobody can understand. How would you expect a director, producer to understand these deep philosophical concepts? So it just scratched at the surface on that. Some people may have that sentiment. How can you discount that? Maybe 90% don't have it, but how can you discount it writing a blank check or a blanket statement that this is all waste? No, not at all. If we splurge on our relatives, and nobody should have an objection when you splurge on God, because it's a one-on-one with God. Fine, you want to do charity, that is also fine. That is a noble cause, do that. But why do you have an objection if somebody does it with God? Nobody has an objection when you do it with your father or to your mother. You present something. So if somebody is doing it with the bhav, you can't discount that. So that is where that whole thing was, played down or probably not even understood in proper context. Hopefully that answers at least a part of it.
So for the announcements, the attendance tracker has been posted. So please do fill in the feedback column. And we do have Mahashivratri celebrations that is coming up on Feb 26th to March 1st. So please do, I posted the link for that. And Women's Day celebrations, I think Women's Day celebrations. So I will post that link. So please do fill that also.
Balam Pichkari, let's talk about that.
Yes, we do have Holi festival and Holika celebrations also in the temple. Sunday at 9:15 in the same Zoom link, we do have yoga session from Devi ji. So please do join that. It is on the same bridge. Lakshmi ji, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, small doubt, Radhe Radhe. Like I've seen few people who used to have negative vows towards God when compared to the other people in the family. But finally, a point comes that they become realized and become more spiritual than the person who was initially with a good with a positive vows. Is that true?
See, it can happen. We don't know. That's why we cannot judge anybody. Somebody may look like atheist or non-believer to us. And we might, so first of all, we should not even look down upon anybody at all, because it gives you pride, unnecessary pride. We don't know who is where in their spiritual trajectory. It's quite possible. It's probably their bad sanskars. And when they pick up on it, they may even leave all of us behind. So nobody has a clue other than God and Guru who's where. So we cannot really look down upon and judge people. They are ahead, they are far, because nobody has any idea. We can only focus on our journey. Because somebody might look like, if you look at Balmiki and some of these people, they were Angulimal for that matter. They were dacoits, right? If anybody have given them a chance to become what they became in the same lifetime, nobody would have given them a chance. So anybody can pick up just like that one day and they can leave everybody behind. So that only God and Guru would know. And our place of sanskars can dictate a part of it. But then it's always a good policy to focus on our journey rather than judging somebody where they are in their spiritual. We have no idea whatsoever. They may look ordinary, they might be doing the regular things, but one day they may surprise everybody by taking out. It can happen. Very true.
Okay. Thank you.
Padmaji, if you can be real quick, please.
I'll just, for the question that actually Nitinji posed, right? If you think about our own children, right, when they're growing up, just to give them an anchoring point or a point of contact until they actually mature enough to realize those vows, and there are vows and those emotions. Like, so you give them picture, you give them an idol that they can relate to, and then you give them the stories, you give them the leela, so that at least the focus on the contact or the care of address first develops in them with the materialistic things, right? You know, the pictures that we show and the ideas that we show, and then eventually that physical nature of practicing, eventually they will develop and mature enough to have their own emotions and vows towards God. So I think that anchoring point is really important to our materialistic mind to connect that there is God and God exists. You know, when that knowledge comes and it ripens, they will eventually experience that vows and the presence of God. That's what I wanted to add. That's all. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, as stewards, we can plant those seeds and hope that one day those seeds will, they'll fructify. But yeah, that's the best we can do actually to anybody, especially our kids or anybody around us, that plant those seeds. And you never know what shape they might take on in future. And that's called the biggest charity possible in this world. Not what we give, when we give money or food or any other help, that is transient. But when you plant those seeds, or you can help somebody in the spiritual journey, it is considered the highest charity. And Lord Krishna says in 18.68 that people who do that, so that's why I say it could be a small seva. We should actually look at getting people, not forcing them like people do. But you never know when somebody, it might click to somebody and they might start, picking up on it. it's considered one of the very highest seva. Lord Krishna says that person who does that is very dear to me. So it's a great incentive for us to invest and see, where how we can help people on this path, because this is the only way forward in life, because there's no other way we can actually equip ourselves to face the challenges that life throws our way, which is going to happen. It's just a matter of time, right? And it continues happening. We know that through our experience. So this is the only way we can build that resilience. And this is something which is a perpetual asset for us, not just in this lifetime, but across lifetimes. It's like so much of power we get. I know we are over time, so let's do our closing prayers. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And yes, real good. Are we good?
Lakshmi ji, please
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah.
Please be very
One
quick.
thing I want to share is, like, my daughter suddenly realized that she has become like devotee of Lord Shiva.
Okay.
Like one fine day, she said, "No, I want to do fasting on Mondays." Then I was shocked. What is this? Then she said, "Yeah, I'm believing in Shiva. He is the boss." So for everywhere she writes, Shiva is the boss. He is the boss. Then I said, "Why you are thinking he's the boss?" Then she says, "See, he is the killer of all the devils or the bad things. So naturally, he becomes the boss." So even the logging words or log for her computer, her cell, everything, she relates something with that Shiva and she makes it. And sometimes she doesn't do fasting on Monday. Then I asked why. Now I got angry on Shiva because what I think he didn't do for me or for others. Like my son did not get the visa. So he prayed, it seems, but the result was negative. So then she said, "Shiva didn't do justice to my brother, so I'm angry. So this week I won't do a fasting to him." Then the next week she said, "Again I'll do it." Then why means, okay, he's giving punishing to me, so I'm giving punishing to him. I'm also punishing him. That is over. Now I'm back to him. Now again this week I'll do fasting. So is it right she's doing, or what should I do? I'm a little confused.
First of all, your devotion conditional. I think she has to, obviously she started, so maybe she'll find her own course around it. But then we don't make our devotion conditional, because if you make it conditional, that we are on the path to becoming atheist. Okay, when it is fulfilled, you say, yeah, there is God. When it is not fulfilled, you are upset. No, there is no God, right? So it cannot continue like that. So first of all, that needs to be taken out of the equation. And then, I don't know, that might be a joke. I'm saying that you say you have met your boss in his official mode. Let me reintroduce your boss to you in a loving form, okay? And then give him that fruit picture. Both are same. So whether you want to associate to your boss when he's in his official mode or in his loving mode, whichever one you feel, let her progress on that. She may have had previous sanskars around it, but let her find her own way. We can only keep our fingers crossed around that. But
now she bought a book.
Yeah.
She bought a book now, The Origin of Shiva. Now she has ordered on the Amazon. She started reading on that. So, okay, I'll tell that explanation, like in which mood he was when you asked that vision. Okay, thank you for your advice.
So the father is in official mode, it becomes Shiva or Vishnu. Father is in loving mode, it becomes Krishna. Father is in Maryada Purushottam protocol mode, he becomes Ram. It's all the same. Yes, Amrita Maniji, I know we are over time. So what you can do is there is a red button right below, just press on that and you'll be good to go. Okay. Any pressing questions? 2 minutes, or Amrita Maniji, feel free to drop off. I don't want to take.
No, it's okay. Yeah, 1 minute each, please.
1 minute each, please. Let's.
Yeah.
I know it's a long, hard day, and we don't want to take more time for.
Yes, the reason I keep telling, I don't want to, the reason is it's getting late because there are people from other parts, like, that it's 11:30 for them. It will be literally 12. So that's the reason. So nothing more than that.
Yeah.
So Pallavi, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Amritwani ji, thank you so much. On the lighter note, I just wanted to say to Lakshmi ji that maybe your daughter has started watching Devagodev Mahadev, because that impact I had long time ago when I watched that series on the television.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation, but yeah, we have some propensities. So with due course of time and with proper knowledge, those things start falling in place. But yeah, the knowledge is the key around that. One more we will take, and then I think.
Yes, we'll give it to Shruti ji. It's where she didn't get a chance. Go ahead, Shruti. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Amritvaniji. I'll make it quick. Radhe Radhe, everyone. So I don't know how old Lakshmi ji's daughter is, but I would say that even if she is doing this, I'm angry or something like that, I was exactly the same. And although I became an atheist for some time, but we always find our way back. It's how we build our relationship, like in regular world as well. Sometimes we are happy, sometimes we're not. It's like you are actually building a stronger relationship, like how we are in with our parents or our siblings, and we may leave them for some time, but at the end we always come back. He never leaves our hand.
Wonderful.
Radhe Radhe.
Great points, Lakshmi ji. So to celebrate, I would say. All right. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and a great rest of your weekend. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and continuing our discussion. Stay
Monday.
safe, blessed, and Radhe Radhe. Monday, yes, Monday.
Thank you, everyone. Radhe Radhe. Have a good weekend.
Radhe Radhe. Have a good weekend.